All right, well, I'm excited about this week's lesson because I can already anticipate that this is going to be a breakthrough for a lot of you. And if you're struggling with sounding the same, like everything you do sort of sounds the same, or it sounds like you're just playing up and down scales, you're going to totally love this lesson because it'll make you sound better and it's easy to implement. I'm talking about triads, by the way. And I wish somebody had sat down and showed me this when I was learning how to play, because once I discovered it, it completely changed the way that I played and sounded. And it's not hard. That's the best part about it. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video, we're going to go through the first half where we talk about triads and how to find them. I'll show you the 3 positions we're going to be talking about. If you'd like to join us for part 2, where we talk about embellishments that you can play off the triads, as well as the tablature for everything and the MP3 jam track so that you can practice playing everything we're going to talk about. You can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP574. Okay, so what is a triad? I can answer that in about 10 seconds. It's a 3-note chord. That's it. It's a chord you play. You take 3 notes, you play them in unison, and you're playing a triad. And you can have major triads and minor triads and different variations. And we're going to be talking about both major and minor in this. But those notes are made up of the major scale. So that's where they come from. So if you play the first note, the third note, and the 5th note of your major scale, you play them in unison, you're playing a major triad. Now, if you play the first and you flat the third and play the 5th, so 1 flat 3 5, you're playing a minor chord. That's all a minor chord is. You just flat the third interval. And so the thing about triads that confused me, there's 2 things. One is when I first learned how to play them, they seem to be everywhere. There's triads all over the fretboard. How in the heck are you going to memorize all of those? And so there was this overwhelm that happened immediately. But I'm going to break this down into 3 containers and make this super simple. I'm going to give you the Swiss Army knife of triads as we get into this. And so there's that. The other thing that confused me was the whole fact that if you're playing a chord, you're playing 3 notes. But when I would play a chord, like a G chord, I'd go, well, I'm playing 6 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, across 6 strings, right? Well, the truth is I'm still only playing 3 notes when I play that chord, but some of the notes repeat. So when I'm playing a G chord like that, I'm playing a G, a B, and a D. And then the next note is a G, a B, they're just an octave higher, and then another G on top. So in actual fact, I'm still only playing 3 unique notes when I play that chord. Some of them are octaves on top of each other. And so that was kind of a revelation when I realized that. Same is true with minor chords. Just remember, the minor chords have a flat 3. All right, so now let's get into these 3 containers that we're going to put these triads in. And these come from the cage system, by the way. We're going to look at the E container, the C container, and the A container. And I'll put all 5 cage system lessons up. If you want to do a deep dive into each of them, you can do that. Just go to Active Melody and search for any of those. But we're going to start off with the E container. I'm going to play a G chord using my E shape, right? Now, inside of that, if I were to just play strings 4, 3, and 2, these 3 notes, that's a triad. That's one of the triads within that E shape. And so I'm going to call that my lower triad, and then I'm going to give you an upper triad on top of that. So that's what we're going to do for each container. So in actual fact, there will be a total of 6 triads. And the thing you need to know about this triad are the note numbers. So that is my 1. Sometimes we call that our root. This is the 3rd, and that's the 5th. 1, 3, 5. You'll see why you need to know them in a minute. But just remember, that's my 1, that's my G note. So that note tells me the name of this triad. So that's a little light bulb for somebody. Okay, got it. G note, G triad. A note, A triad, A major chord. Okay, so back to our G. So that's the lower triad. On top of that, we have the top 3 notes out of this E container. It looks like this. Now there's a little bar here. This is easy to do. Bar the first 2 strings on the 3rd fret, and then we take our middle finger and play on the 4th fret 3rd string. So that's also a G triad. So we have a G triad here, and then we have one here. Now the difference between these 2, you can tell they sound a little different, is the order of the notes. So there's an inversion that happens there, and the notes have changed order. So now The bottom note is our third interval. I say bottom meaning the lowest note in pitch. That's our third interval. That's our fifth interval. And then the 1 is on top. So that's our G note. So that means this note tells me the name of this triad. So if I were to play this note up here, that's a B note. Therefore, if I made this triad, I'm making a B major chord, right? So let's get back to our G. So we have our upper triad, and then we have our lower triad. Now, as I said, you can flat the third interval to get a minor chord. So 1, 3, 5, there's the 3. To flat 1, and we just go down a fret. So we play that note. We still keep our 1 and our 5 exactly where they were though. So now it sounds like this. You can tell it sounds minor. It's got that sad kind of sound, right? So that's a minor triad, kind of the lower triad in that E shape. And then up here on the top, that's our third interval, right? So we're gonna flat that again, just like we did. And then we can play. And look how easy that is. One finger, that's a one finger chord. Doesn't get any better than that. So we have the bottom minor triad and the upper minor triad. So that's what we have so far. Now, big deal, right? So you've got these two triads. Now what can you do with it? Well, we can already start to use just that information. So if I were to play a 1-4-5, for example. See what I'm doing there? I'm playing this triad, and then I come up here and play the 4 chord using that shape. So instead of me playing my C chord here, which is where you would do that, I'm using that E shape. I'm using the E container to hit each of those chords. So I can play the top part for each. Now, it sounds kind of boring and bland, but it's going to get better as we start to add to this. So that's the first little thing, is this E shape. Now let's move on to the next shape, which is our C shape. So we're still going to stick with a G chord. All we need are these 3. And the way that I do that is I bar. Now I realize not everybody can bar, so you can play this without the bar. But I bar here on the 7th fret, first 4 strings, and then I've got 9th fret, 4th string, and then my middle finger on the 8th fret, 2nd string. And I play strings 4, 3, and 2. So within the C shape, or the C container, this is my lower triad. And listen to those notes. They're exactly the same as these, just in a different position. So we have this. Now the upper triad in this container looks like this. So that's the same shape as my D chord in first position. Exactly the same shape. But if I play it up here, I'm playing a G chord. Now the thing I forgot to mention are the note names, or the intervals. And so when I'm playing this lower triad, this is my 3rd, this is my 5th, and this is my 1st. Same as this, 3rd, 5th, 1st. But when I'm playing this upper triad, I have the 5th interval, the 1st interval, and the 3rd interval. So it's yet another inversion of that same chord. So now we've got, right? And it's just, we're just moving on up the fretboard. So the minor shapes in this position, we flat the 3rd. There's my 3rd. We go down 1, and you just play it like that. That would be my minor triad in this C position. And we do the same thing for this upper triad. We take our 3rd interval and we just lower it 1. So now we have that. Now that should look familiar, because if you think of your D chord in first position and then your D minor chord, hopefully you're starting to see that. Oh yeah, we're just flatting the 3rd when we play that. Like it helps you kind of see what's going on. So now we're doing it up here. Same thing. All right, so that's our E shape and our C shape. Now let's come up to the A shape and look at what we can do with triads up here. Now this first triad, we'll start with the lower triad, which will be here, but look at this. It's another one finger deal. So this one's super easy. Now the way that you would actually make, if you were playing the full chord out of this, is that you would include this note. But if we're just playing the triad, that's all you need to do, is just play those 3 notes, strings 4, 3, and 2. And I'm barring on the 12th fret there. Those are the same notes, by the way, as these notes. And remember the order of the notes here were the fifth, the first, and the third. Same is true up here, fifth, first, and third. So this is my G note. That tells me the name of this triad. And that's my third interval. We can flat the third interval to get the minor chord, right? So, and that looks like my A minor shape in first position. And by the way, look at that. Let's look at our A. Look, I'm using one finger. Are you seeing this? Oh, yeah, there's my A chord down here, and there's my A minor. I'm doing the same thing just up here, right? It's the same principle. And so the top triad in this container looks like this. And so I always refer to that as the top part of my A shape. But that top triad looks like that. And those notes, by the way, that's the first on the third string. That's the third, and that's the fifth. It's exactly the same as this, the one we started with. It's just a full octave higher now. And to play the minor version of this triad, remember we just flat the third. So we come down here, and now we're playing this. Notice that's a little stair step. You've heard me talk about that in other lessons, the stair step shape, that minor triad. Well, now you can kind of maybe think about that different. Okay, it's coming out of this. You're just flatting the third. And that's where that's originating, I guess. So now what I want to do is I want to play along with the jam track. We're going to start to pull all of this together. Now, these are the chords in the jam track. G, B minor, C, and D. These are all chords in the chord family of the key of G. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off using just the E shape, the E container. We're going to play those chords without the jam track. I just want you to hear this on its own. And we're going to play the lower triad across those four chords. So it'll sound like this. There's my B minor, C, up to a D. Remember, this note is my D note. That's my D triad. Okay, so let's do the upper ones. There's the B minor. There's the C. There's my D. Now notice I kind of slide into those. First little tip there, you can kind of slide into the notes to kind of, or the chords to give you that little, it's a little more thought out sound, I guess, when you hear that. So you can see that I'm playing all over the fretboard when I do that. Let's be more efficient about it. Let's do this. There's my G. There's my B minor. Look at that. The stair step shape that I just talked about, I'm playing it here. How do I know that's a B minor triad? Well, there's my B note on that third string on the fourth fret. Now, if I were to think about the container this is in, there's my B container using the A shape. Okay, there's the lower triad that we talked about. And then here's the upper one. You flat the third. Okay, so all the things we talked about down here, I'm just kind of going through that so that you can see that triad is here. Now, why did I pick that instead of jumping up here? Well, it's real close. So it just makes it easy, and you can start to seamlessly connect the notes when you're playing your chords or your lead. This is the key to the thing. Check this out. G to my B minor. Now I realize I'm just arpeggiating the chord, but I'm doing that just because we don't have the jam track yet. But you can see what's going on. Now let's go to the C. Look at that. There's my C chord. C chord using the A shape. There's the lower triad. There's the upper triad. Ah, where's my D chord then in this neighborhood? I've got two options. I can go up 2 frets and play it here, or I can go down here and play it. So for my C, I can go. Back to the G. Now let's do it up here. Let's go. G. To the C. Now watch this. Here's my D. Look at that. There's the D chord using the A shape. There's that little triad. Do you see what's happening there? I'm able to, in each of these positions, I'm able to go through all the chords there. And I can do any chord, by the way. These are just 4 random ones, but it doesn't matter. The chord you're looking for is never more than 1 fret from where you're at. I'll put that lesson up on the screen if you want to see what I'm talking about. So anyway, we can come up to this position now and play those same chords. All right, so now that we have that, let me play along with a jam track, and I'll put up on the screen which triad position that I'm using so that you can even pause the video if you need to and just kind of work it out. But I want you to be able to see what's going on. And this is just a very simple way of playing. There's not a lot of embellishments. It's really just playing through the chords. So I'm able to take any of those positions and play all 4 chords within that position. And I can also go up and down this way. So I can go like this. Now I realize I'm doing some little embellishments. Now I'm going to talk about all of those embellishments in the part 2 video, so I'm saving that for the second part. So here's where it starts to get really cool to me, is the fact that you've now got major and minor chord triads that you can play all over the fretboard. So if you've got a song that you're working on and you want to play the chords in different spots, you've got these easy little triads. They're easy to play. They're not like cumbersome big bar chords or anything. They're just super elegant and simple to play. And if you want it to sound a little higher, you just come up the fretboard and find the version of it up there, or vice versa. So you can go down or up the fretboard. But where it gets really cool is if you start integrating these triads into what you already play. So if you play major scale stuff, or let's say you're a pentatonic player, maybe you're a blues player and you want to work in some of these triads into your blues, well, now you could take your minor pentatonic scale, for example, and go, well, there's that little triad, right? Now what I did there, you know, that little harmonized 6, I came up to this triad, just played strings 2 and 4. There's my C, right? Because I was in that neighborhood. Now I'm not getting into all the embellishments. I am going to save that for the part 2 video, but I just wanted to kind of point that out, that you can use this in anything, this information. It's not limited to just a chord chart or something that's, you know, where you have to arpeggiate chords. You can just take your pentatonics and play those around these triads, just kind of work them into your playing. It will make your playing sound a lot better. And those are like target notes. They're perfect notes to land on in your lead stuff. So see what you can do with that. If you like this lesson, leave a comment below. I always appreciate comments. Whether you've been confused by something, actually leave me that comment too, because I'll try and clarify in future material. Or if you just enjoyed it, maybe you've had a breakthrough. I appreciate learning that. All right, we'll see you in the part 2 video where we'll go over the embellishments.